I'm Christine Dunbar from speechmodification.com, and this is my Smart American Accent training. Welcome to our live Saturday question and answer class. At the start of class, I always talk about a topic related to American English pronunciation, English fluency, etc. But please feel free to put your questions in the chat at any time. You can ask about pronunciation of words, whatever you're struggling with in English that would be helpful for you to make you feel more natural, speak more fluently, more easily. So today I want to start with this phrase. This was requested by one of our viewers, and they wanted to know how to say this phrase, how to pronounce it, and how to sound natural when saying, "Your guess is as good as mine." So first of all, let's just briefly talk about the meaning of "your guess is as good as mine." It basically means somewhat what it sounds like literally, that it basically means I don't know, and you have as much information as I do. So you're as likely to be able to guess correctly as I am. It's a way of saying I don't know, and putting responsibility for finding information or making a guess or thinking of something back on the other person. So I might use this when someone says, is there going to be a big crowd tonight? I might say, your guess is as good as mine. I don't have any information to share that you don't have. Okay, so what happens when we're pronouncing this? First of all, in connected speech, unless I'm stressing on the word your, it's often going to be reduced to sound more like your. So if I was trying to say that's your turn, that's your responsibility, and I'm stressing on it, then I would use the or diphthong. But if I'm just saying your guess, that's your turn, I will use the sound, and that's one of the common reductions we do in fluent speaking in English. Your guess is as good as mine. The word guess, even though it's spelled with letters UE, it just has the vowel. Your guess is as good as mine. Generally speaking, the important words in this phrase are going to be guess, good, and mine, because mine comes at the end. So because when I'm saying it fluently, because the other words are not as important, this whole part is as good as is all going to be linked and going to have some reductions. So first of all, the words is and as, the letter S says the Z sound. So we want to make sure that we keep our voice on as we're linking is as good as, is as. So I've rewritten those here for you with letter Z, so you can hear how that links. And then in the word as, we have the a vowel like black and cat. But often in little words like as or that or and, that vowel becomes a reduced vowel if it's not stressed. If I was saying, for example, as I was saying, if I was stressing on that word for some reason, I would use the clear a. But in many fluent speaking opportunities, when we say as, we use more of an vowel or even almost a schwa vowel. It's not a clear vowel. It's very reduced. So as good as, is as good as. I wrote it here for you with the letter E. Is as good as, is as. You can also think about it like an vowel, is as good as. So there's not going to be much distinction between my is and my as in is as good as. I think the as is slightly more reduced and it's going to be a little more open, which is why I think of it as an vowel, and I wrote it with an E here for you. The way to get that to be fluent and natural is to start with the word that has a little bit more length and stress, and then go back to these linked words. So that would sound like saying good, is as good, is as good as, is as good as. So this one, it's almost like that Z just links right onto the end of good. So good is a content word. It's more important, has more meaning. These other words are just structure words that we flow through to connect the rest of the sentence. Your guess is as good as mine, is as good as mine. And finally, mine is going to be stressed because it is a content word. It has some meaning here, and it comes at the end of the phrase. So our general pattern for stress is that we stress the last content word at the end of the phrase. But we're also going to have a little more time on these other content words, guess and good. Your guess is as good as mine. Okay, so a lot of details there, but it's a good example of just how we can look at the written words. And if I were to say this word by word, your guess is as good as mine. I'm pronouncing all of those words correctly, but it doesn't flow, it doesn't link, it doesn't have that natural fluent sound that we're looking for when we're trying to speak English correctly and fluently. Okay, great. Thank you so much for being here. It's nice to see so many of you here. Please feel free to leave questions, ask for topics that you'd like to see me cover in the chat as you're watching, or if you're watching this as a replay, you can leave your questions in the comments. Let's see, we'll take our first question. This viewer is asking what's most common and natural when using continuous tenses, verbs, glottal or flap T, like getting, fighting, eating. So in American English, we typically, for words that have the t sound in the middle or the letter T, we use a flap. That's our most common. So we use a flap T, which can be marked like that. A lot of times the dictionary won't show you though. Online dictionaries can be helpful if they have American English. You can listen for whether you hear getting or getting, fighting or fighting. So the first way I was modeling was more British, an aspirated T. American English, we use that flap T. A flap T is basically voiced, but the pressure doesn't build up. So when I say something like talk or take, you can feel and hear the release of the air. T at the start of the words, starts of stress syllables in English have a buildup of pressure. My tongue stops the air behind my teeth, lifting up to the palate at the alveolar ridge, and then the air bursts out and we hear that release. Take, talk. In getting, my tongue just taps up lightly to that spot, but it doesn't build up any pressure, and then it drops right back down. We also do that for when we have two Ds in the middle of a word, followed by an unstressed syllable, like in bedding or in middle. We use a flap here as well. So I often call it flap T, but really the sound is just called a flap. And other languages use flap for the R sound. So they might say something like pero, where that letter R is just a flap sound. So this bedding and getting have the same sound in the middle. You can learn a lot more details about how we say T in the middle and ends of words in our Sounds of English course, where I walk you through all of the different sounds and spelling, how sounds change depending on the context of the word, where they are, and that's on our website, speechmodification.com. Great question. Thank you so much. Okay, we have a question about the letters P-R-O in proprietary. So I think that's your word, right? Yeah, proprietary. And this viewer is asking whether it can get reduced and that R can be dropped. So people make that error, proprietary, but I wouldn't recommend dropping it. It's not really an accepted pronunciation of the word. It is difficult sometimes to do both of these pr sounds. What I would do is think of this rather than as being an O like pro, because we stress on the pri syllable, we actually hear this O says the sound. It's a schwa. So we have ter-e. So thinking about it like pri, ter-e, proprietary. It's difficult for me to because double pr sounds are hard. But I wouldn't recommend following if you hear people say proprietary. That's incorrect, and you might not be understood in what word you're using. So just practice using a short little pr. The way to get there is start on the stress syllable, prietary, and then add your pr back. That sounds like prietary, proprietary. So I'm stretching on the pri, and then I have reduced shorter syllables for the other parts of the word. Yeah, I do have some lessons and videos about words that start with pro. They can say pro, they can say pra, or like in this word, they say pra. Usually depends on the stress in the word, and then that's one of the areas where we have some differences between American English and British English, so it can be helpful to know how to use a dictionary to look up words and to recognize some of those patterns in the common words that you use that start with letters pro. Thank you, that's a great question. Okay, I did a little poll on the community page for our channel asking about what other topics you'd like to see me talk about in our live class. So while I'm waiting for more questions, I'll cover the top couple topics that were talked about. So one of the things I offered to talk about was linking the R sound between words. So I want to talk about that now. And then, of course, please feel free to keep leaving your questions in the chat. So R is a very prevalent sound in English, and for some people it's very difficult. But once you've mastered the American R, working on just words that start with R, words that have R in the middle, and words that end with R, you want to be able to link and use R fluently and naturally between words. So what I recommend for that is a couple of different things. First of all, practice words with R in the middle, because it's very similar to how we need to link between words. So if I'm saying, for example, let's say the word hearing, I have to go from the E to the R to the I. So I'm doing ear, and I don't really want I don't want to think of this word as he-ring or hearing. Although if I had to choose one, I would choose this one, hearing. I really want to think about that R connecting these other two parts of the sentence, of the word hearing. So focusing in on that, I do ear, earring, hearing, that I have to move in and out of that R fluently and naturally. And the way to get that is to really practice a lot of moving in and out of R sounds. The easiest and probably first and best way to practice is going from vowel to vowel. So what I would suggest, I'll be making a podcast soon for practice help with this, but think of having your R in the middle, and then you're going to have different vowels before and after. So I might have, I'll spell them with vowel letters. So I might have an E, I might have an A, I might have an A, I might have an O, or an oo. So we'll just do a few of those to start. And then over here, I might also have an E, an A, maybe I'll add an eh, an ah, an and an oo. And I'm going to go connect with the R in the middle. But I don't have to just do only e, re, a, re. I can do those first. E, re, a, re, ara, oro, uru. I'm just going in and out of the R, but also doing things like e-re, a-ra, ari, so that the combinations that happen within words and between words that I've practiced moving in for those sounds and finding the ones that are more difficult for you. It might be harder for you to say ora or ora. Then practice more on that, because that's a place where, for example, if I'm saying the words for I'm actually doing an or and an sound for a minute. This practice just helps you with what your mouth has to do. And then you want to practice on common everyday words. So for example, I might have a list of words that end with R and the next word starts with a vowel. So I could do for, your, that's this your, are eggs. In my podcast, I'll have a very good list of common words that end with R and start with vowels that we would naturally put together. But I can practice for your are eggs. I'm going back and forth and connecting and linking that R to the next word. And then the other thing I'll practice is words that start with R, read, write, and starting from another word to those words. So with a vowel or with a consonant sound, I might try, for example, the red, the right. For that kind of linking, I would actually start with the R. It's a little different where the R is not connected so much to it's more about connecting from the vowel. So for these, it might be more helpful to practice words like did, had, did write, had read, choose, had read. I'm practicing moving from that consonant and having my R ready for the next sound. Oftentimes people ask me about words with the R in the middle, where the R goes, what syllable goes on, and really it's not so much about where the R falls in the syllable and more about being able to go in and out of that R sound. So I do have some videos talking about this, some resources, and this is also something we cover in our Sounds of English course, looking at R in the beginning, middle, and ends of words and how to link it, because that's oftentimes people get used to just practicing read, write, words that start with R, or air, ear, fear, fire, etc. And they don't integrate them and start using those to practice putting them together in phrases and sentences. And then they still struggle with, why does my R sound different, or why do I still struggle to say this R sound? It's really about practicing and finding ways to connect the R through common short phrases and even just using sounds and R to make it motorically easier for you and more natural sounding. Okay, so we can go into more detail about that. And as I said, I'm planning a video and podcast for some practice materials for that. If you haven't yet checked out our podcasts, they're really designed for you to be able to listen and repeat on the go. So a lot of times our videos, I'm teaching a concept and I give you some examples. And then in the podcasts, there's more likely to be lots of examples for you to listen and repeat, to shadow, to really implement some of the things we're working on for pronunciation, fluent speaking, and intonation. Some of them will be more basic, some are more advanced, but they're designed to kind of take it to the next level and to give you more opportunities to really practice and get that fluency happening for you in your speech. So you can check those out here on the channel. Just look for our podcast playlists on the channel page. Also, the podcast is available. It's called Speech Modification, Smart American Accent Training. You can find it wherever you find podcasts. So on Amazon, Apple Podcasts, iHeartRadio, etc. Thanks so much. Great. Okay, let's see. We have a few more questions that have come in. We have a question in the idiom. For the idiom, I get a kick out of jumping. Is it okay to omit the second part of the of? So the letter F in of says the V sound. It sounds like of. So if you're saying kick out of, I get a kick out of. I get a kick out of jumping. I get a kick out of that. We'll just use that. What people do is, if I'm using the word of, I will say the V sound. I won't drop it. But oftentimes in this combination of out of, people will say it more like outa, and they'll change it to a schwa. So it is okay. You can just do outa, which sounds kind of like the T gets flapped. It sounds kind of like outa. I get a kick out of that. I get a kick out of jumping. I didn't get a lot out of it. I think if I do out of it, then I have to keep my v sound if I have a vowel here. So that's the caveat. If I'm saying, I get a kick out of jumping, eating, talking. If I have a consonant sound there, I can drop the V and just say out of jumping, out of talking, out of going. If I'm using a word that starts with a vowel, I get a kick out of eating hot peppers, out of eating. The V is going to link to the next sound, and I won't drop it. I could say I get a kick out of eating, but then I have to do a little bit of a stop, and it makes it a little harder. So generally we default to whatever makes us more fluent and sound more natural. So yes, the v can drop, but mostly I would say we use that when the next word begins with a consonant, maybe less so when the next word begins with a vowel. Thank you for that question. And of course, as you know, the idiom get a kick out of something means to enjoy it, find it fun or cool or exciting. Great. Okay, we have a question about deterioration. That's definitely a tough word. So for deterioration, deterioration. When I modeled it, I said or, but we don't actually use an or there. It's more of an sound. The stress in deterioration falls on the a syllable. So words that end with shun are always stressed on the syllable before the shun, which is part of what makes this hard. The deterior has to be fast and linked together because where I stretch is on the a syllable. So just break down syllable by syllable and take these slower at first. Then we'll work on speeding them back up. So for d, we'll have either a schwa there or an I sound. I'm going to write it as d. And then this letters ER say the ear diphthong, deter. So think about it like that, deter. I didn't leave myself enough room. Deterior. We have a sound there. Deterior. As I go from the E to the I have a little y that connects those two. Deterior. There's my A shun. All right. So deterioration. We have secondary stress here on this tier syllable. So we have a clear ear vowel and we use an aspirated T rather than a flap. Deterior. It's like the word interior or exterior. So that terior is a good thing to practice. Start here with terior. Then add your d. Terior, deterior. And finally, deterioration. So you're right, it's a great example of this R connects the eerie. So if I had practiced on eerie, that's going to help me. And then here I have ure. So I'm moving from the to the A. So deterioration. Yeah, not easy. Definitely one to take slow, build it up syllable by syllable, know where you're kind of connecting, where you're stretching, and that this first part goes quickly, which is part of why it's so difficult. Thank you. That's a great word. Okay, I'll take a few more questions and then we'll wrap up for today. If you're watching this later on, feel free to leave a question in the comments and I'll make sure to cover it in a future video, or I'll refer you to some resources here on the channel or on my website, speechmodification.com, to answer your question. We have a question about multiple pronunciations for the word hour. Are there guidelines for which is which? Yes, and I do have a video covering this. So typically, if I'm stressing on the word hour, for example, it's our turn, then I'm going to use the full our pronunciation, which sounds the same as it's our turn in an hour. You can notice as I say our, that's a triphthong. I'm almost doing kind of an ow, our. There's a little w sound that sneaks in there. To not or, but our. But this is, again, a word that often gets reduced. So if I'm saying it's our house, notice how I didn't say it's our house. I can, that's correct, but often in fast speech, this our gets reduced just to an R. It's our house. It's our house we're talking about. So that's just a natural way, just like the word for can become more of a fur, the word R can become more of an we reduce these R diphthongs to a simpler version. So this triphthong of our becomes more just R. It's our fault. It's our car. It's our video. It's our lesson. It's our website. So generally in fluent speech, it's smoother and easier to use R. It's not incorrect to use our. It's our house. It's our turn. But you can hear how it doesn't flow as smoothly. I have to slow down, and it gives that word our a little too much stress if I use the full our version. So go with more, sounds the same as the word are. Great question. Thank you so much. Okay, so that's those reductions and fluent words. I have a lot of short videos for practice on those. That's something I'm also covering in our longer listen and repeat and shadowing podcast videos and some other videos. You can check all of those out on our Fluent Speaking playlist. If you're looking for the playlist, just go to the channel page and you can scroll and see various playlists. Or if you have a question about something that I referred to that you'd like to see more, leave me a comment and I'll send you directly to the video or playlist to answer your questions. It's great to see so many of you here today, and thank you for your great questions. I'll be back again next Saturday with another live question and answer class. Tomorrow we'll have our special Sunday. We're looking at the word interested and how to use that in fluent speech, how giving you some opportunities to shadow, listen and repeat and practice, learn more about the basic pronunciation and then how to be more fluent. So check that out in tomorrow's special Sunday video. Monday we'll have a short video for our mini Monday, and Wednesday we'll be back with our word of the day. Thanks so much for watching, supporting the channel, liking, sharing, and especially those of you who have joined as channel members. I truly appreciate your support. You can get lots more free and inexpensive resources on our website, speechmodification.com, so I hope you'll check that out as well. I'm Christine Dunbar from speechmodification.com. Remember, if you want to sound like a native speaker, you can do it. speechmodification.com. Bye, everyone. Hope to see you again soon.